On today's show, the Nets shuffle their roster at the trade deadline after swinging more deals with the Celtics and Nuggets, and Egor Demin and Nolan Traore turn in their best performances of the season during a loss to the Magic. I'll dive into all that on today's episode of Locked On Nets.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to Locked On Nets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Now the number one sports podcast network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. I'm Erik Slater, Brooklyn Nets beat reporter for ClutchPoints.com. Thank you for making me your first listen of the day. This show is 100% free on all those great platforms. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. And on today's episode, I'm continuing my coverage of the NBA trade deadline. The Nets made a few more deals following their trade with the Raptors on Wednesday. Nets also had a loss to the Orlando Magic where Egor Demin and Nolan Traore balled out. Some other guys struggled. The team struggled as a whole, but I'm going to get to that later in the show. But starting it off, some more trades. The Nets swung two more deals. The first of which I want to talk about is a deal with the Boston Celtics where it wasn't just a salary dump deal where the Nets were taking in a player to get a draft pick alongside him. They also got a prospect that they seemingly have some hope for, and that is Josh Minott, a 23-year-old forward the Nets acquired from the Celtics for cash consideration. So the Celtics were executing a salary dump. They were trying to kind of toe the line of getting under the luxury tax while maintaining their core. So because of that, they had to get off multiple minimum salaries to make that happen. And Minott was one of them. And the Celtics don't even give up a draft pick to get off of him. The Nets take him seemingly because they have some hope for him and they think that he can turn into something. And that's understandable. I mean, I would be, if I was a Nets fan, at least somewhat moved by this deal, because Minott is a player who showed some promise for the Nets early this season. If you look at a lot of the advanced numbers, you look at his measurables, he's a guy who I think could make some sense for the Nets. He had a really good game against Brooklyn earlier in the season, but just looking at this deal and why the Nets could be intrigued by him, you look at him, he's a 6'8" wing, 7-foot wingspan, and he played well for a Boston team that was doing good things earlier in the season. He fell out of the rotation after Jordan Walsh kind of solidified himself. We know the Celtics have a very talented rotation there, much more so than the Nets. But you look at Minott over his first 20 or so appearances of the season while he was a full-time member of the rotation, he averaged 7 points, 4 rebounds, 1.2 assists, 0.8 steals, only in 18.5 minutes per game. And most impressively, he shot 51% from the field and 44.4% from three on 7.1 attempts per 100 possessions. So he's a guy who has shown some two-way promise and two-way versatility, in terms of the things that he's able to do defensively with, being 6'8" with a 7-foot wingspan. He's been a disruptor. He's been a guy who's been a plus defender on that end, or at least shown the profile and potential to get there. And then offensively, he's steadily improved as, a rim finisher, as a three-point shooter. He's a guy who, he played his first 3 seasons with the Minnesota Timberwolves and had some struggles on both ends. But I think that you look at the two-way profile that he has, he fits a lot of what the Nets are preaching or what the Nets want to do. You look at what the Nets said after the draft, they really put a premium on guys with great positional size, positional versatility. Now you bring in a guy like Minott, and he has, two-way versatility. He can play multiple positions. He can shoot it, at least this season, is shooting it at a high clip and has been a willing shooter. And then defensively, he can guard multiple positions and make things difficult. So I find this, as a player that the Nets are just getting for free on a very low-cost contract. I mean, the Nets, I think, sent $110,000 in cash considerations in this deal, which was the least amount that you were allowed to send to make a deal legal. They get him for nothing, and you look at him, he's on a minimum contract, and then he has a $2.6 million team option next season, which I would fully expect the Nets to pick up. So they have a season and a half of extended runway here to give Minott an audition. And you listen to some people around the league talk about what he did with the Celtics early this year. They have some hope for him. And for the Nets, getting a guy for free, on this low cost of a contract, I like the move. And I think it's similar, to some of the other moves that you've seen them make, even at a lower cost. Like you look at a guy like Zaire Williams. The Nets got Zaire Williams. They got a second-round pick alongside him. So they were compensated for that because Zaire Williams is making more money than Josh Minott is, but they fit a similar profile in terms of bigger wings, defensive versatility, can make things hard on that end. You hope that they can develop somewhat offensively. But I'll say that Minott, I think, is a better athlete than Zaire Williams is. And also, small sample size, but he's shooting 44% from three on high volume or decent volume this season, whereas Zaire Williams never approached decent three-point percentage with the Memphis Grizzlies. So Minott's a player I would have some hope for. And as of now, I would expect him to be back with the Nets next season on that minimum team option. And I think that he could be a guy who turns into something. And if not, the Nets, really didn't sacrifice anything by taking his contract on. So I like that deal. And the other deal the Nets swung was with the Denver Nuggets. They acquired Hunter Tyson and a Nuggets 2032 second round pick and sent out a 2026 second round pick, which is going to be the least favorable of the Clippers and Hawks. The Nets subsequently waived Hunter Tyson. They also waived Tyrese Martin to make this deal work, which we're going to get into in a little here. But if you look at this trade after waiving Tyson, the Nets got another 2032 second rounder in exchange for what right now is the 44th pick in this year's draft, because it's going to be the least favorable of the Hawks and Clippers. And right now, the Clippers is the 42nd pick. The Hawks is the 44th pick. So the Nets are essentially trading the 44th pick for an unprotected 2032 second rounder from the Nuggets. And, that's fine. Like, you get some more upside with that 2032 second from Denver being unprotected. The Nets also have several other picks. I think they have 35 and 42 already in the second round of the 2026 draft right now. So they probably think they don't need another, fourth pick in addition to the first round pick that they have. So I understand that. And after this deal, the Nets have a lot of 2032 picks. They have the Nuggets first rounder and second rounder in 2032. And they also have the Raptors and Heat seconds in 2032, which they acquired in the recent trade with the Raptors and also the Haywood Highsmith trade with the Heat. So that's 4 unprotected picks in the 2032 draft, 1 first round, 1 first round, 3 second round. So maybe the Nets scouting department is just going around to middle school gyms around the country and salivating at some of these 13-year-olds who are on the court right now. But no, in all seriousness, I think that they're just looking at these picks. And if you're getting unprotected picks from teams like this, you want to just push them out as far as possible because anything can happen in that time frame. So now the Nets have, a first rounder from the Nuggets. They have second rounders from the Nuggets, the Heat, and the Raptors. And look, those picks can end up being at the top of the first round, that Nuggets one pick, and it can end up being at the top of the second round, those, unprotected second rounders. So we'll see how that plays out. But just quickly touching on the Nets roster situation after all of these moves at the trade deadline, if you look at it with the guys they brought in and the guy that they waived in coming at the deadline for the Nets is Ochai Agbaji and Josh Minott. Out is Cam Thomas, Haywood Highsmith, and Tyrese Martin, each of which they waived. And I'd say that it's not surprising, that they waived Cam Thomas and Haywood Highsmith. I think, maybe some people thought they were going to be able to find a trade for Cam Thomas. I spoke about that with Lucas Kaplan on yesterday's episode. Go check that out. But ultimately, nothing materialized. There was a report from The Athletic, but the Nets did have conversations with the Cavaliers centered on swapping Lonzo Ball for Cam Thomas. And I assume the Nets would get draft compensation, but those talks didn't really go anywhere. It seems like the Cavaliers didn't want to give up much draft compensation for Cam Thomas. So they waive him. Haywood Highsmith being waived, that makes sense. The Nets waived Tyrese Martin, which I think to some people might come as a little bit of a surprise, but from my understanding, they waived him to make this deal work because they had 16 players after making this deal. So they waived Tyrese Martin. They end up waiving Hunter Tyson and opening up a roster spot. Maybe they could have maneuvered it in a different way to keep Tyrese Martin, but ultimately I think that this was probably the Nets doing Tyrese Martin a little bit of a solid and also just not seeing him as a part of their plans because Tyrese did some nice things in the last couple of seasons. Ultimately, I don't think he ever really got there as, from a shooting efficiency standpoint, but I do think as a player who has at least some promise, but he is 26 years old. The Nets are clearly pivoting towards playing the rookies. They're starting Egor and Nolan in the backcourt. They have Ben Saraf and Drake Powell playing reserve minutes in the backcourt, and I think that they're only going to lean into that more heavily as the season progresses, especially with a tanking agenda. So I think the writing was kind of on the wall for Tyrese Martin that he didn't really have a role here. They didn't really see him as a guy who was going to play a significant role long-term. And with that, they release him. He's allowed to go seek another opportunity, and they open up a roster spot with Hunter Tyson also being waived. And the Nets have an open roster spot now where they can sign guys to 10 days as the season progresses. If there's a guy who they find interesting, they can bring him in. So we'll see how that all plays out. But, the Nets did a lot of maneuvering at this deadline. They got some assets, and they got two players in Ochai Agbaji and Josh Minott, who at least have some intrigue as no-risk flyers. So I don't hate that. Next segment, I want to get into Egor Demin and Nolan Traore. The Nets blowout loss to the Magic last night, but Egor and Nolan each turned in their best performances of the season while starting alongside one another. So what did we see from those guys? Why should Nets fans be encouraged moving forward? I'll get into all that when I continue Locked On Nets after a quick break. Guys, the season's heating up, and DoorDash has a way to keep fans in their bag all the way through. Whether you're watching the highlights, the tunnel fits, or just your favorite player, DoorDash makes the entire season more fun because every player has their bag. With DoorDash, fans have one too. DoorDash keeps your snacks stocked, your gear fresh, and your watch party vibes absolutely on point. There are nights when your team stresses you out. Let DoorDash become your post-game therapy. Sometimes you just need dessert now. Those late-night interviews hit, and suddenly you need chips at midnight. DoorDash is built for exactly that. If the group chat says pull up, DoorDash makes sure you're always prepared. Snacks, cups, even a phone charger for the friend who's always at 2%. From tip-off to overtime, stay in your bag and order on DoorDash. Get snacks, drinks, gear, whatever gets you through the season, delivered right to your door. DoorDash, in your bag all season long. Guys, new year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our business and think there has to be a better way. And there is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades you can make. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Quo, the smarter way to run your business communications, because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. Guys, Quo makes everything simple. Your whole team can call and text from one shared business number, so nothing gets missed. Everyone sees the full conversation thread, which makes replies faster and more personal. And Quo's smart AI tools automatically log calls, summarize conversations, and highlight next steps, so no details ever slip through the cracks. It's no surprise Quo is the number one rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than. It's no surprise Quo is the number one rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. Make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free plus 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/LockedOnNBA. That's QUO.com/LockedOnNBA. Quo. No missed calls, no missed customers. Coming back from the break, continuing today's Locked On Nets episode, now getting into Brooklyn's 118-98 loss to the Orlando Magic on Thursday on the road. The Nets, again, another performance where they were pretty atrocious. I mean, this is now, I think, 5 performances in the last 9 games. They were coming off the heels of an embarrassing loss to the Lakers. This is another game where they were really bad. They were really bad on both ends. They were terrible defensively. I'm going to get into that. None of the veterans really played well, but I think you can still take a lot of positives in this loss because 2 players, really the Nets' only players who had good games in this one, I would say Egor Demin and Nolan Traore. And they weren't just good games. They were great games. Both of these guys put up their best performances of the season. They're starting alongside one another these last few games. You look at it, Egor Demin, 26 points, career high, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, 8 of 12 from the field, 6 of 10 from 3, 4 of 5 from the free throw line. And then Nolan Traore, 21 points, also a career high, 3 rebounds, 8 assists, 7 of 13 from the field, 3 of 7 from 3, 4 of 5 from the free throw line. And I think both of these guys just looked very comfortable. They looked very poised. Like, were there some ugly moments? Were there some turnovers? Sure. I think it was a good experience because both of them spent extended stretches where Jalen Suggs was guarding them, who is just like a junkyard dog and is salivating at the mouth to cover these guys. And despite that, like, they both got stripped a couple of times. They both had some turnovers. But for the most part, I think they kept their composure and they had good performances, high-level performances alongside one another against a good Orlando Magic team. And starting with Egor, Egor just continues to look like he's gaining more confidence. And on the nights where Egor has it going from 3, he looks like a player who is a very efficient and effective player. I mean, in this one, 6 of 10 from 3. This is his 4th game or something like that with 6 made threes this season. And he just looked poised. I mean, he even had a few flashes of 2-point shots where he got down in the lane on a backdoor cut. He finished at the rim. He had another one where he backed Jalen Suggs down a little bit in the mid-range, hit a turnaround fadeaway jumper. I just think that you look at the variety of ways that Egor is, particularly converting from 3. He just looks very confident. He's hitting threes off the catch, off the dribble, pump fakes, side steps. he's just a player. I've said it about him. If he's at 6'8" with the 6'10" wingspan, if he's shooting this well from three, which all of the indicators are like green all the way, that he's going to be a good, if not elite 3-point shooter moving forward. You have that. You have the decision making. He's, I think, doing a decent job taking care of the ball in terms of his passing and his process there. And then you have the defensive versatility, which as he adds strength and weight, he should only get better on that end. You have the makings of a productive player. And sure, there's going to be some ups, there's going to be some downs. Like the game against the Lakers, Egor looked really bad, as did almost everybody on the Nets. But for the most part, if you take a step back and take like a 5,000-foot view of Egor's season, very positive. And I think undoubtedly when you look at the players who were taken behind him, I don't think there's that many people who you can that mad about the Nets not drafting. I think that this is looking like a good pick in the moment, and it was the Nets' first lottery pick in 15 years. So this performance, just off the heels of some other recent high-level performances Egor had, like the one against the Utah Jazz where Michael Porter Jr. was sidelined and the Nets got their first win without MPJ. Egor's just stacking some really good showings. That is encouraging. And then Nolan Traore, who's a guy who has had a little bit more of a question mark surrounding him, also, played really well in this game. I said 21 points, career high, 7 of 13 from the field, 3 of 7 from three, 4 of 5 from the free throw line, was really showing some 3-level scoring flashes, looks more confident from 3 in this game. Like he had been struggling from 3, but is still willing to let it fly and hit some tough ones. And then just Nolan, was advertised as a walking paint touch, and he's really been that. Like there were a couple of plays in this Magic game. I think one play where he was being guarded by Jalen Suggs and one play where he was being guarded by Anthony Black, where he's kind of bringing the ball up the floor, like secondary transition set, and he sees a lane to the basket and he turns on the Jets, and he's just a blur, man. Like he leaves guys in the dust. He had plays against Jalen Suggs and Anthony Black where he turned on the Jets and those guys look like they're standing in quicksand. Like it's just, he had another play against the Lakers where Luka Doncic was trying to cover him and he hit him with like a crossover and went by him to the rim. And it's like Luka was standing still. Like he didn't even have a chance. These other guys who were better defenders like Black and Suggs, they didn't have a chance on those plays. So he's able to get downhill, and I think that we've started to see some nice flashes of him getting downhill and making some better live dribble reads, whether he hits the skip pass. I mean, he's like a skip pass aficionado at this point. Like he throws skip passes over 2 defenders that hit guys right in the shooting pocket that are really encouraging. We've also seen plays where he's connecting on lobs, where he was off he was off rhythm with Nick Claxton and Day'Ron Sharpe earlier in the season. He started to convert on some of those lobs. We're seeing him get downhill, and when he gets to miss the trees down by the basket, we're seeing him like Nash dribble around the baseline and hit guys in the corner or hit cutting big men for layups. I just think that something that I've been looking for from Nolan Traore, the 2 main things are him kind of slowing down as a driver, like letting the game come to him a little bit more in those moments, whether playing off 2 feet, whether getting downhill and kind of probing a little bit more, whether Nash dribbling around the baseline, just giving himself extra time for cutters to reveal themselves and for him to keep that live dribble read as opposed to just going into big men and attacking them at the rim and getting rejected. He's doing that well. I think that's one thing. And then also the 3-point shooting, like still very much so a question mark, but I think that we're seeing him, start to shoot, better from 3, or at least have better confidence from 3. And overall in this game, 21 points, efficient from the field. He had, as I said, 7 assists to 4 turnovers. So you want to clean up the turnovers, but, pretty efficient there. And he played 38 minutes in this game. So I just think an encouraging performance from Nolan Traore. And these are really the only 2 guys, Egor Demin and Nolan Traore, who I think had encouraging performances in this one. And with the Nets having so many blowout losses, I mean, they had, as of late, they had the 50-point losses to the Knicks and the Pistons. They had another game against the Clippers where they were down 50. They were down 39 against the Lakers. They were down big in this one. I'm seeing some Nets fans, on social media, in my comments on YouTube, getting super worked up about this. And I understand that it's embarrassing, some of these performances. You don't want to see your team play this way, but ultimately, this is a tanking season. This is what tanking looks like. And it's going to look like this sometimes. And you're still getting rookies playing a lot of minutes. I mean, in these last few games, the Nets are playing 5 rookies in the rotation against playoff level teams. It's going to look really ugly. And I want to say there were a lot of Nets fans last season and earlier this season who were clamoring for this team to tank harder, who were clamoring for this team to play rookies earlier in this season. They're doing it now. They're fully leaning into the rookie development, regardless of wins or losses, regardless of performances. It seems like Nets fans are getting a lot of what they wanted. And now, some people are very angry about this. And I just think that Like, stay consistent. Stay consistent in what you want. Another thing that I'm noticing with Nets fans is the Nets' other rookie first-round picks, particularly Danny Wolf and Ben Saraff, who are struggling in a pretty big way as of late, especially Saraff. Like, the Nets are playing him through some struggles. They're not sending him back down to the G League, which it seems like is a lot of what Nets fans wanted earlier in the season. Danny Wolf has also come back to earth in a big way, but like, these guys are rookies. These guys are the 26th and 27th picks in the draft. Ben Saraff is 19 years old. All the other Nets rookies are 19 years old besides Danny Wolf, who's 21. So, like, I think Nets fans aren't used to having rookie first-round picks like this, and maybe aren't used to some of like the growing pains that you're going to see from some of these guys, or how long it might take from some of these guys, and then also what a tank looks like when you're playing 5 rookie first-round picks, which is something that no team has ever done before. Like, the Nets are leaning into development. They're leaning into the rookies in a big way. That's coming with more losses. Sure, it's going to come with some embarrassing outcomes, but this season is about draft position. It's about player development. Those are the 1As and the 1Bs, and the Nets are prioritizing those things more than anything else right now. So I don't think you can be too mad at that. And if you look at the rookies, like, you got to give them some time. Like, there are some games where Egor looks terrible. There are some games where all the other rookies look terrible. Like, they're 19 years old for the most part. If you want to say, Danny Wolf is 21, he's older than Noah Clowney, sure. Like, I think that you can have some concerns about that pick, but at this point, he's still a very young kid. You look at like Ben Saraff and some of these other guys, you could say, sure, like, we wanted Hugo Gonzalez. We wanted whatever other player was picked after Ben Saraff and Danny Wolf. At the end of the day, they were the 26th and 27th picks in the draft. The Nets were making dart throws based on attributes that they identified, which was clearly positional size, passing ability, feel for the game, some shooting. They obviously thought Egor and some of these other guys had some shooting potential. And if a few of those guys hit, which it's looking like Egor is going to be a hit, Nolan and Drake up in the air, Danny and Ben are struggling right now, but we'll see. But if they hit on 2 or 3 of those picks, that's a very successful outcome. So I would caution Nets fans, amid the blowout losses, amid some of the rookie struggles from the later round picks, pump the brakes a little bit. Like, recognize what this season is about. And I think that the Nets are going about this the right way. And it's going to look ugly at times, but I do think that the process is correct. And if you're looking at the guys that they do have, the rookies that can develop, the assets that they have, a top pick, which I'm going to get into, it's starting to look really juicy in terms of the Nets' position in the draft lottery standing. I think that this season is all going mostly as fans could have or should have been hoping for. So that's what I got to say about that. But on that note, I would understand if you had some gripes with the effort and the performances, particularly of some of the veterans during these recent losses. So I'm going to get into some of those struggles. I'm also going to get into what is the tank race and the tank landscape looking like as we approach the stretch run of the regular season. So I got all that when we close out Locked On Nets after a quick break. Guys, it's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of the action with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from the kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Coming back from the break, continuing today's Locked On Nets episode off the heels of the trade deadline and another blowout loss, this time 118-98 to the Orlando Magic. And I touched on Egor Demin and Nolan Traore, who I think were the only Nets who had high-level performances in this game. And the rest of the team, frankly, was just abysmal. And it starts with, the veterans. And I'm going to point to 2 guys like Michael Porter Jr. and Noah Clowney have been struggling in a big way as of late, and they struggled in a big way again in this one. This was arguably Michael Porter Jr.'s worst game of the season. I think you have this game and you have the Clippers game, but this game was really bad. MPJ finishes with 9 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 of 13 from the field, 2 of 7 from 3. And these last couple games, it almost just looks like there's stretches where like MPJ doesn't want to be out there, particularly on the defensive end. I mean, these last couple games, the Nets defense as a whole is terrible, but MPJ's defensive engagement and defensive effort has frankly been atrocious during the Lakers loss and this Magic loss. Like, there's no other way to put it. And look, I'm not saying this thinking that MPJ was ever like a good or high-level defender, but I think in the stretch where the Nets were playing well, you saw him giving pretty consistent effort. You saw him being engaged. And then there's some games, like you saw in the 0-7 start, he looked like he didn't want to be out there. He was just, chucking on offense, and then the defense was terrible. You saw that stretch where he started to improve and play at an all-star level. The defense looked more engaged, and now, we have a recent stretch where the defense is looking pretty bad. And in this game, the Nets defense was terrible as a whole. Like, they're trying to do all this stuff. They're trying to switch a lot of things off the ball. They're trying to send doubles. They're trying to play at the level with their big men, and there's just miscommunications all over the court. But MPJ, when you watch him during the game in these last couple of losses, is the person who sticks out to me of he just doesn't really look like he cares on the defensive end during these last couple of games. I mean, he's miscommunicating frequently. He's losing guys on backdoor cuts. He's letting up offensive rebounds. And look, I understand it. MPJ's been carrying the load in a big way this season. He's one of the only reasons the Nets had any success during that stretch in the middle of the year. But it looks like he's starting to fade somewhat in terms of intensity. And this is something that you see from MPJ sometimes, it's on and off. I said during the 0-7 start, it didn't look like it was there at all. Then it looked like it picked up a little bit, and now it looks like it's starting to trend in the wrong direction in terms of engagement, intensity, focus, and look like it's a tanking season. The Nets are playing 5 rookies. You're getting into the dog days of the regular season, so this should be somewhat expected, but I do think that it's pretty ugly in the last couple of games. So we'll see if MPJ is able to bounce back from it. And I should point out, there was a sequence during the Lakers game where I think it was LeBron drove right past Noah Clowney. MPJ was kind of standing near the gap. He had an opportunity to step in, contest the shot, do something. He didn't. He kind of gave LeBron the easy pass to the rim, and LeBron lays it in. Jordy Fernandez calls timeout right after the play, and he reamed out Michael Porter Jr. He was yelling at him. He had his hands up. He was clearly very mad. MPJ kind of just turned his back and walked to the bench. And then there were also moments during this Magic game where Jordy was kind of throwing his hands up on the side. What are we doing? So the fans who are mad about the tanking and mad about some of this stuff, this is where I can understand it, because there's going to be some ugly games where the effort, the intensity, and the engagement isn't there. And I think that you're seeing that particularly with some of the veterans during this recent loss. And in addition to Michael Porter Jr., Noah Clowney in this one, his worst performance of the season, he had 0 points, bagel, 4 rebounds, 0 assists, 0 of 6 from the field, and 0 of 4 from 3. And Noah, obviously, first 4 or 5 games of the season was pretty bad. Then he entered the starting lineup and looked really, really good and really encouraging for an extended stretch. And now, as of late, he's been struggling for a while now. You look at his last 20 games, he's averaging 11.8 points on 35% shooting from the field and 25% from 3. So this has been an extended stretch where Noah hasn't been very good. And you look at it for the season, he's been much better on 2s on higher volume, which is a major positive, but he's down to 31% from 3, albeit on very high volume. But a lot of Noah's impact is going to be predicated on his 3-point shooting, because he's not a guy who is a fluid ball handler, who has a lot of twitch. He's getting better going to the basket, but that's never going to be his bread and butter. I think it can be a complementary thing, but a lot of that is going to be predicated on people closing out hard to him. And we're starting to see some defenses go under screens, short closing to him, daring him to shoot. And he's been struggling in a big way as of late. And the Nets have always maintained that they think that Noah is going to be a very high-level shooter. But I will say now that we have a decent-sized sample of data. If you look across all of Noah's games the last 4 seasons, and that's college, G League, and the NBA, he's shooting 31.8% from 3 on 6.5 attempts per 36 minutes. So we have an extended sample now. I'm not saying he can't get better as a shooter. He's had stretches where he shot close to 40% from 3 for extended times on high volume. So I think that it is in there. The Nets think clearly that it's in there, but we have a 4-season sample where he's shooting, 32% on middling volume. So the 3-point shot's going to be huge, and you're just going to have to hope that Noah develops in that area and that he starts knocking shots down. But just last thing on the team-wide level, it's pretty clear, no matter how well some of the rookies play, some of the other guys play, the Nets can't compete with good or decent teams when MPJ and Noah are playing like this. They just don't have the offense. So if they're going to be more competitive in coming games, they're going to need both of those guys to kind of snap out of it and get back to what made them successful earlier in the season and just start hitting some shots. But overall, you look at the Nets now, they're making some noise in terms of the draft lottery standings because the Washington Wizards won last night. So if you look at the Tankathon standings, pull them up right now. The Nets are in 4th place now. They have sole possession of fourth place in the draft lottery standings because Washington won last night. So they're in fourth. They're one game ahead of the Wizards. They're only a half game back of the Pacers for third. And they're also a game and a half back of New Orleans, 2 games back of Sacramento for the top spot. But a half game back of the Pacers for third, a game ahead of the Wizards for fourth. And that is really notable because 2 of the Nets' next 3 games come against the Wizards on Saturday, and I think it's the Pacers on Wednesday, their last game before the All-Star break. So the Nets have an opportunity to gain some separation from the Wizards behind them and also get up into the top 3 and potentially pushing up towards the top spot of the draft lottery standing. So I would have a big eye on who's playing and who's not playing during these upcoming games against the Wizards and the Pacers. If I were the Nets, I would sit MPJ in at least one of those games. I would sit other guys in the other one. Like, these are prime opportunities to get up towards the top of the draft lottery standing. So we'll see how they approach that. But that's all I got for you guys on today's episode of Locked On Nets. If you're not already, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Nets on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, whether Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you enjoy my content, take a second right now, smash that like button, leave a comment, leave a 5-star review. Anything you could do to engage is much appreciated. The Nets got the Wizards during a Tank Fest on Saturday at Barclays Center. So I'll have coverage of all that and more when I'm back tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.